Hello, I'm Diane Ford, welcoming you to another in the series Real Talk in the Face of Danger, a podcast by the Department of Emergency Management. It's been over 15 months of the COVID-19 pandemic, and everybody seems mentally exhausted. It has imposed so many changes on our lives that it's mind-boggling. We're also still into the active part of the hurricane season. We were hit by Hurricane Elsa. So there's so much that is going on. And the most challenging part of it is that we don't seem to know when it will come to an end, when there will be a return to relative normalcy. So today we want to talk about the importance of mental health. We are talking to certified wellness coach Christine Franklyn, and she has a wealth of information to share. Christine, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Diane. I'm so happy to be here.
Without a doubt, the COVID-19 pandemic is a disaster, and it has caused a lot of mental stress for a number of people. Even sometimes you don't realize it. What types of mental or emotional struggles do we face as a people in these kinds of uncertain situations, Christine?
Well, in these kinds of situations, all sorts of worries and fears tend to pop up. So it's perfectly natural to look at what's going on and wonder, oh my gosh, what's going to happen in the future? And especially if you've already experienced something negative, some kind of loss of a job, maybe even loss of a loved one, it's especially difficult to feel hopeful. But there are some things that we can do about that. So that's what I'm going to talk about today.
Okay, so what are some of the main areas where you will see people having the mental stress? Because I think a lot of times when we talk mental health, we're thinking a level of madness that we say in the common way. But what are some of the real struggles that you see? Is it anxiety? Is it depression? What are we facing?
Definitely anxiety and depression, especially unrecognized anxiety and depression. Because remember, this is a situation that we've never dealt with before. And people may be feeling feelings that they've never felt before. So they might not even know how to define them, how to express them, or what to do. And when we talk about mental health, we're talking about generally having a positive state of mind and typically feeling safe and able to face and cope with reality. And also part of that is having a sense of connection with people. That's also important to our mental well-being. So, of course, all of these things are challenged right now. And so the effects of that inability to really feel positive about what's going on and the future is the key thing that is hampering people's mental health.
What can we do for ourselves if we are feeling, as you said, sometimes it's unrecognizable, but what can you tell us? What should we look for? Or what can we do for ourselves? And perhaps what can we do for others if we notice others around us that seem to be outside of their usual selves?
Right. So for yourself or for others, the key thing that I would start with is looking at your physical and emotional health, because those are the foundation of your mental health. When you're eating wholesome food or getting regular exercise and managing your stress, you're automatically better equipped to handle things that can come your way. So that's the advice to start with for yourself or for anyone else around you. And when you think about all those components that go into physical health, we can't forget our sleep. So if you don't have restful sleep, what happens? You tend to be more irritable. And then what happens when you're irritable? You may snap at people in your life, and then your relationships suffer. And remember, we talked about having a sense of connection being important to mental health.
Yeah.
So when those relationships start to suffer, you are unlikely to start linking it back to the poor sleep that you might have had, which may have started with the poor nutrition that you may have had, or the lack of exercise, and maybe constant worry. So all of these things are very closely intertwined, and we need to be really aware of what's going on in our lives in terms of our physical health and our emotional health. So that's the first starting point. Continuing on from there, I mentioned difficulties or challenges. And when I say challenges, I mean everything from stumping your toe to losing a job or losing a loved one. There's a saying that how you deal with the little things is how you deal with everything. And if you tend to focus on complaining or despairing, and you let something that may be small disrupt your day, or maybe even, if it's something bigger, disrupt your entire life, then that can start a downward spiral. So it is extremely important to make a conscious decision about how you want to handle everything, from little annoyances to big problems. Will you let these difficulties be disruptive, or will you recognize that life is short? And really, we need to do whatever we can to make the most of every moment. So we can do that by literally refusing to let worries and fears take over, which is not as easy as it may sound.
No, it isn't.
But we need to put things in place that can help. So, it may be hard to feel optimistic sometimes. That's the reality. But don't sweep that feeling under the rug. Acknowledge it. Don't bottle it up and, pretend that everything is fine, because that only makes everything worse. And those upset feelings that you never dealt with will surface at some point, possibly in a more out of control way. So it's best to observe how you're feeling. If you need to wallow in it and feel some self-pity for a very short time, go ahead. Write down what you're feeling, because that actually helps a lot. And another important tip here is don't be hard on yourself. Imagine you were speaking to a child. If you were speaking to a child, you would say things like, you did your best under the circumstances. So even for adults, we need to be kind to ourselves and say the same things to ourselves. And this is a good time to point out that spirituality is an important element of this, because it has been proven that those who believe in a higher power and believe that this higher power is in control of everything, these people tend to be more hopeful. So that's just something I'll mention along the way.
I think you're giving some amazing advice and tips on how to deal with it. I particularly like what you said, that how you deal with little things is how you will also deal with big things. And I think it comes across to me that this preparation for dealing with our mental health is not to wait until there is a disaster, but we need to just arm ourselves as we do with anything else, if and when something happens. So I think that's amazing. I'm happy that you also mentioned the approach that we take with children, because I wanted to ask, as we get close to our wrap-up time, should the approach be the same for children or the elderly as for maybe what we would call working or young adults?
Yes, for sure. These things are fundamental human needs, so they apply across the board. And, I think adults really do worry more than children. So you might have less to deal with from that aspect. But definitely in terms of having a focus on keeping things positive for yourself and for your family members, whether old or young, that is absolutely key. So I always suggest as well, having your toolkit, having those small goals that I talked about, or a positive affirmation, or a comforting scriptural verse handy, maybe even visible, that you can look at when you need a little pick-me-up, when you need to feel more positive about life. And that can really go a long way.
Thank you so much, Christine. This has been awesome indeed. Thank you for sharing with us on this podcast.
You're most welcome. I'm so happy to be here.
Christine Franklyn, a certified wellness coach in Real Talk in the Face of Danger. This podcast by the Department of Emergency Management. Remember to take care of your mental health and the health of those around you.